My presentation is basically in three parts. I'll give an overview of the Nigerian creative sector, followed by what pertains in Hollywood, and finally, what we expect from the Biden-Harris administration. The Nigerian creative industry, which includes fine arts, stage, fashion, media, and the film industry, and that is popularly known as Nollywood, is undoubtedly one of the fastest growing industries in the world, and its tremendous global impact is unquestionable. When we add hospitality and sports, the potential is enormous. The Nigerian entertainment industry is by and large one of the sectors that accounted for the rebasing of the Nigerian economy and pushed it up to be the biggest economy in Africa. Also, worthy of note is the global interest in Africa and the African culture, as these African elements are some of the attraction draws in a lot of theme parks and zoos all over the world today. And of course, Wakanda Forever, the movie. So now, according to the Guardian newspaper in Nigeria, in 2018, the arts, entertainment, and recreation industry represented 0.21% of Nigeria's GDP at a value of nearly 270 billion naira, which is almost equivalent to $1 billion. In the first quarter of 2019 alone, the industry garnered approximately 87 billion, which accounted for 0.27% of the economy of the country's GDP. The Nigerian box office also contributes significant value to the nation's economy. In 2017 alone, 4.3 billion was realized, and it is expected to grow to an estimated 6.4 billion by the year 2022. Nollywood, if some of you are familiar with it, if you are not, you really need to check it out. It produces about 50 movies per week, and it earns between 500 million to $1 billion US dollars annually. The reason why the gap is that much is because not all of the revenues are reported and have been captured with the data. So for all we know, it could potentially, maybe it has even grown beyond $1 billion annual returns. It has been identified as the second employing arm of the nation. And its position is being second is being contested by the agriculture sector. This is also being preceded by the Nigerian government. Suffice to say, though, the creative industry has the capacity to transform the economic outlook of Nigeria, in that the sector impacts all sectors of the economy. It creates direct and indirect labor from it and all its ancillary industries. The Nigerian film industry is a formidable industry. It is considered a giant in Africa, also the second wave of the economic arm of Nigeria. Industry experts, which also include the United Nations Education and Scientific Organization, known as UNESCO, they said that Nollywood, the viability of the industry is enormous. It has been rated at different times, sometimes as the second, sometimes third, sometimes first movie producing nation in the world, only surpassed by Bollywood. So really, Nollywood has surpassed Hollywood in its capacity to produce movies. In concurrence with UNESCO's findings, others have found that Hollywood is a dominating force in West Africa. So Nollywood is to be contested with. It is also interesting to know that outside of Africa as a continent, the United States of America is one of the largest consumers of Nollywood movies, especially with a high population of Africans in the United States. Netflix, among other online platforms, already have a dedicated website for Nollywood movies and television programs. There are currently about 40 Nollywood movies on Netflix. Without a doubt, Nollywood is the fastest movie producing nation in the world. As Nigeria now diversifies its economy from oil, the entertainment industry is one of the top sectors with the greatest economic value that will enhance the economy of the nation. The advantage of the sector includes the element of being multi-genre. You also have the music, movie, stage, media, fashion, all encompassed. It's multicultural with all the different ethnic groups in Nigeria. It's multilingual, about 250 distinct languages and more. So it is worthy to note that this is an industry that should be recognized by all administrations all over the world. Now, the second part of my presentation is on Hollywood. We all know that Hollywood sells the United States of America much more than its State Departments, more than its embassies or Ministry of Foreign Affairs or United States Information Agency. What we know about United States today is really gleaned from what we've seen in its movies. So there's no doubt that the desire to tour America is for the most part fueled by the impressions, whether real or not, that are created by Hollywood movies. In line with the common knowledge of assumption, or assumption if you would call it that, is that Hollywood is actually partnering with the US government. Why am I saying this? It appears that Hollywood uses movies as an antecedent to sensitizing the public about potential future events, especially its plans in Africa. Movies are used to encourage, movies we know encourage willing suspension of disbelief, suspended beliefs of the surreal. They are used as a way to send subliminal messages and to build traction in guiding our belief system, the way we think and the way we interact with each other and with our communities. Science fiction and even animated movies are examples. The current pandemic was already shot in a movie called Contagion, starring Gwyneth Paltrow, even before we heard of COVID-19. And you know, The Simpsons also predicted Donald Trump's presidency back in 2000. So you now see the connection with what can be achieved with the movie industry. There are more movies that have predicted future events, such as Blade Runner, The Cable Guy, Super Mario Brothers, You've Got Mail, Minority Report, Back to the Future, The Truman Show, and Total Recall. So there are movies that are also set in Africa that are made in Hollywood as ways of raising our consciousness. And from these, we drive social and political activism about events in Africa. Such movies as The Last King of Scotland, Gorillas in the Mist, Blood Diamond, The Constant Gardener, and all the movies made about the late president of South Africa. Now, so you see that creative industry is a vehicle for engagement. So we are pushing and we're seeking that the Biden administration, what we really need in Nigeria that will also cover Africa, though we don't want a one-size-fits-all approach, what we need is a policy of engagement that will engage all 54 countries in Africa. We want formalized access to the US market and knowledge exchange. We want policies that are engaging. US should connect and explore with all 54 countries of Africa. We need proper representation and branding of Africa's creative arts. We want to brand Africa in a way that will contrast what was done in the past. We need protection of policies that make provision for the protection of trademarks of African arts in the US. We want licensing and proper representation of the continent, simple. But to achieve this, there are some other things we need to consider. They are the copyright laws and protection, policies that make provision for the protection of trademarks, licensing and proper representation of the continent, proper branding of the continent, the insecurity issues that are paramount in a lot of African countries, actually really globally. But Nigeria has been identified as one of the top nations that are really, really negatively impacted by terrorism. We also need to look at financing. I'm so happy to hear a lot of people on this panel discussing investment in Africa. Financing is critical. And as the Nigerian Diaspora Investment Summit is about to commence its third year, we're really hoping we will be able to encourage Africans, friends of Africa, and Nigerians in the diaspora to come, participate, and invest in Nigeria and those in Africa. We need to look at the issues of web connectivity. You know, some of us in Nigeria connecting to this webinar have been quite a challenge. So we need to look at that issue in relation to what we're talking about with the Harris-Biden administration. Then, of course, the systemic corruption, not only within Africa, but about all the stolen African funds that are being housed in the United States. Also, the unfair financial practices in the continent. A lot of things we found in Nigeria is that, you know, the US or the USM, they charge Nigerians much more than other nations for such items as the visa, you know, even exchanging money, going through Western Union to send money to Nigeria. We get the short end of it because we are paying double taxation in Nigeria. We also want to seek that Biden's policy on immigration should be fairer than Trump's. Also, the 4-year visa ban for student visas. I know that a lot of African countries will be impacted with this new Trump's policy. So Trump's ban on Nigerian immigrants and African immigrants really should be lifted. Africans in the US suffer the same fate as African Americans on race issues. So we like fairer policies that should be implemented by the Federal Civil Rights Intervention. All lives matter, but Black lives really, really do matter, as they have not been mattering much from what we've been seeing. A final request, it would be highly honored if the Biden-Harris administration will look into is apologies for slavery. You know, and if they can also have this, they can distribute a repatriation to all families, just like they did with the Jews and the Japanese. So these are like a tall order, but if fulfilled, it will go a long way in healing the nation. When I talk about the nation, I talk about the United States of America. And it will also open doors for greater opportunities with the African continent, opportunities for further engagement. Thank you very much.